At a time like this, we need to be focused on helping the survivors, and the USS Washington and other ships are providing essential help in saving lives. But we also need to be concerned about the next storm and the one after that. How did the early warning system perform, and how could it be improved?
It was certainly a significant factor in this case, and while it's hard to speculate exactly how many lives it saved, I think we could say pretty confidently it definitely saved lives. USAID, both my office, the Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance, and our development mission in the Philippines have worked for many years with the government of the Philippines to help reinforce and build up their disaster risk reduction capacity. And they take that very seriously because they are hit by disasters many, many times a year. In this case, the storm was anticipated well in advance, and there are regional meteorological networks that helped contribute to that awareness. That enabled the government of the Philippines to evacuate nearly 800,000 people into emergency shelters out of the way of the storm's path, as well as pre-position food and some other commodities.
So reports that the storm surge took many people by surprise, you think, is exaggerated?
I think that the storm surge was surprising. I think what we were anticipating was certainly heavy winds, rainfall. Actually, we were anticipating a much worse rainfall problem than we saw. You know, and these predictions are never exact.
So did the storm surge come as a surprise to our scientists as well?
The storm surge, and much like I think with Superstorm Sandy here, where the severity of the storm surge was not anticipated, I think it's a similar dynamic there. We anticipated some, but not a 30-foot storm surge.
Do you think after Hurricane Sandy and after this situation that we should begin to reevaluate what it is that we should be expecting in terms of storm surges? Is the fact that the oceans are getting so much warmer and these storms so much more dynamic now something that actually should be factored into what it is that we include as warnings from storm surges?
I think, and I'm not a scientist on these issues. Clearly, we need to factor in the potential for storm surge, and I'm not sure what the science behind making that possible looks like, but it's something that in our, after any disaster like this, USA does an after-action review that's pretty thorough, and I'm sure that will be a factor that we're going to look at.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that many of the casualties occurred in government shelters that collapsed or flooded. Were they badly built and positioned, or was the storm just too strong?
Senator, my understanding is that, and I can't speak for everyone, but in general, the people were evacuated to storm shelters that most of us anticipated would serve the purpose effectively. But the storm surge in particular that Jeremy described, I think, affected and inundated some of those shelters, even if they withstood the wind and the rain.
So what was, this was an EF4 tornado strength, winds. What were these shelters built to withstand? Do you know?
I don't know offhand, but we can look into that. I think there's going to be, certainly once this initial period of intense relief activity settles down, there's going to be a lot of probing of those kinds of questions.
Yeah, I think it might be advisable for us to work with them so that we might be able to give them a good recommendation as to what the strength should be, given kind of the predictable nature of intensifying of storms. I mean, water expands when it's heated. The oceans are getting much warmer, and as a result, the waves are much higher. As a result, the storms are much more devastating. Okay, so this is something that's scientifically indisputable, and I think something that we should work with them to help them to think it through. It's worth noting that this typhoon was forecast to potentially hit Vietnam after it just struck the Philippines. Just last month, the United States and Vietnam agreed to a civil nuclear cooperation agreement. I think we should begin to think about whether or not we should be putting nuclear power plants, with U.S. cooperation in countries like Vietnam, knowing that without proper protection, there could be catastrophic consequences that flow from the interaction of a natural disaster and a nuclear power plant that is not as strong or as well positioned as it could be. We just saw that in Japan, and they're going to be going several generations with the consequences of a natural disaster linked to nuclear power plants. And so from my perspective, you know, I want to, you know, congratulate everyone who participated in helping, especially in these early stages of relief. But I think for USAID, for the State Department, for the Defense Department, I think that we all have to come together in a way that deals with the national security consequences of climate change, the impact that it's having upon our allies and our enemies, that modifies their behavior in terms of how they are able to, in fact, control their own environment and understand then what the consequences are for our national security, because theirs is undermined. So again, it's just one more warning. And if we needed it, it's a domestic issue as well, with 65 tornadoes all dropping down in one day out in the Middle West in the middle of November. This is unprecedented, the impact that climate change is having, and it has severe long-term national security consequences, and we thank both of you for your work. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, let me join Senator Markey in his concerns. I mean, it's clear that the realities of more extreme weather require us to be engaged internationally on mitigating as much damage as we can with the new reality. Of course, the best course, as Senator Markey has been one of the leaders, is to do something about this from the point of view of climate change. And I think both are important points, that the cost of these storms in loss of life and in the cost of rebuilding communities is enormous and beyond the capacities of governments to be able to respond to. And then when you put certain facilities in these high-risk areas, the security issue becomes even greater and the cost even greater. So I thank Senator Markey for raising those issues. And I am very impressed by the U.S. response to this storm.